You can always tell a rabbit trail because there's a degree of grooming, and if you look, I don't know how well you can tell, but there's like a bit of a tunnel through the grasses and brush there. And of course there's a little rabbit pellet right there. Hey, it's Greg here with Outdoors on the Cheap. It's a couple days before Christmas, and I'm just out for a few hours in the woods, gonna set some snares, maybe have a little fire and a little lunch and a little tea and that sort of thing, and I thought I'd just bring you along with me. I thought I'd share the view, sort of what I'm seeing while I'm going along in the woods. This is a really steep spot where I have to be careful. Got the walking stick along today just to make sure I don't slide down the hill. We had a heck of a lot of rain last night, so I'm coming up to the bridge from a previous video. I'm expecting the water to be high in the creek here. This is one of these creeks where it's about 3 feet wide and 6 feet deep normally, but today it's much more substantial, as you can see, and it's a good thing I wore my rubber boots today as opposed to my leather ones. It's not that cold anyway, it's around 0. Anyway, came out, last time I crossed this thing, it was really precarious, and actually came out and did some repairs. And I should have filmed that because I just repaired it using rope, to tell you the truth. I gotta hold this in my other hand here. All I did was just sort of peg it down and tie it down so it was a little bit more stable on days like today when the water's just so darn high. This is normally really not this amount of water is in here. Usually there's no water over there, whereas today that looks like a creek, even though that's just where the water goes when it's high. It's like kind of like a floodplain around here. It's a boggy, sort of wet, boggy area. Anyway, this leads to a lake eventually, but yeah, you can see the water is sort of over the bridge. I was gonna tear this down and repair it this year, but I was gonna replace it this year, but when I was repairing it, I determined that it still had some life in it. So I don't know, maybe in March I'll reassess the state of it. Well, you always think with these things, one more year, just one more year, because it's basically a whole afternoon kind of thing to repair this. You can cut down the trees and peel them and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, certainly I got a better setup for dealing with this now than I did in the last video, because I've sort of, well, just done the repairs to the bridge. Hey, I got a bit of a circular route that I'm going to take through the woods, and that way you're not coming back the way you left. Basically the circle begins when I leave the bridge here, so I'm going to start the circle. Now, today there's no snow on the ground, or hardly any snow. We've had a couple good snows and we've been shoveling the driveway and stuff, but nothing has accumulated. Nothing at all. So only the most obvious rabbit trails are going to be the ones I set any sort of snare on. And some of this territory I'm going through is new territory, put it that way. So I'm not sure where the good spots are. But anyway, I've got a sort of route, a circuitous route that I'm going to take this season. And normally I have a few days off this time of year, so I can get out and check them every day or every other day. I usually bring my kids out with me sometimes. So that's what I'm going to do. And have another route that I use when I'm not on vacation, that's a bit closer to home, that I can check after work or check before work. Not as deep into the woods, so I can deal with a headlamp and that sort of thing, and it's not quite so precarious. But anyway, This is a neat spot here in the woods. There's sort of a rock formation. You can see here all kinds of holes in it where deer have walked, right? So I've made something resembling a bit of a trail through this. This area is kind of like a moraine. There's a line of rocks here, and if you follow them, there's a lake over to the right, over that way. If you follow these rocks, they'll sort of take you to the lake. And if you're walking in amongst the rocks, at certain points you can hear water moving underneath them. You rarely ever see water. It's just like a whole bunch of big boulders on top of each other going down, right? So it's like a river, but it's an underground river, so there's always water moving through there, but you can never see it. So it's kind of a neat spot, and it's very treacherous walking because there's all kinds of holes you can fall in and that sort of thing. So I tend to just walk either across it directly or walk parallel to it, which is what I'm going to do now. So here's a spot I noticed. You can see a little sort of hole through the rocks over there, and it just looks like a rabbit trail to me. There's a little spot going along here, and it's just a little bit lower than, it's like it's hollowed out here, and it's narrow, and there's all kinds of, like, there's branches and stuff, so deer aren't using that. And there is such a thing as porcupine trails, but it doesn't have the size, to me, of a porcupine trail. It looks like a rabbit trail to me. I don't see any rabbit droppings, so that might be a porcupine trail. Sometimes they're hard to tell from one another, and they use the same trails. And there's all kinds of these big rocks, and porcupines in the winter tend to den up under big rocks sometimes. Hopefully maybe along this walk or another one I can show you a sign of a porcupine den. Usually you have a big rock with spaces underneath it, and you look in there, and if you can see all kinds of porcupine poop, they tend to basically poop outside the front door. So I'll keep an eye out for those. Anyway, I'm going to set one snare here because this, to me, this looks like a rabbit trail. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So let me get set up for that. So I changed my mind. I'm not going to set a snare here because I don't see any rabbit poop. I keep using the word rabbit, but I mean snowshoe hare, varying hare, right? That's what it is. It's not a rabbit. But anyway, what I'm going to do instead, this is a little trick I've learned over the years. When you're setting snares in, when there's no snow, is to put something rabbits like to eat next to a trail and see if they eat it. You know, so this is birch tips, you know, like just little tips off a birch tree. Yellow birch. They love yellow birch, and if they come by here, they're gonna get at it. And just to make it extra high probability, what I'll do, let me just show you here. So I got the birch tips. The trail's right here. They'll come along and they'll, you know, I mean, it's they recognize that stuff the same way you would recognize the smell of barbecue or a nice cold beer. Anyway, I'm also going to put, this is the tree I took that from, sapling, just one of the branches basically. Just going to take some of this bark, so you can just peel it off right here. So there's all this has a strong smell. Even with my dull human senses, I can smell the smell of this birch bark, the sort of underbark, right? And it smells nice. I can smell it, and I can distinguish it from other things, right? So if they're coming through here, they'll smell this bark. Maybe they'll take a couple bites of this. These ones here, none of the tips are bitten off, so when I come back tomorrow, the next day, some of these tips might be bitten off. Maybe there'll be some rabbit poop here, and then I know they come through here on a regular basis, and it's worth taking the time to set a snare. And if it's a good trail, I'll set 2 or 3 snares on it. All right, off to the next spot. All right, so here I'm in a spot, and really, I guess the theme of the sort of snaring part of this video is really snaring when there's no snow. Because when there's snow, it's easy. You can tell what a heavily used trail is. You can tell what a lightly used trail is. When there's no snow, you really have to know your sign better, right? You have to know sort of how they think and what they do. Right, so this here spot right along here looks like a trail to me. You can see that the moss is down a bit, and it seems to be maintained. It goes underneath a little log there, and you know, I would keep an eye on this, but I'm actually going to set a snare because I noticed, I did a little searching further down this way. It does sort of go down like that, but I noticed a little rabbit poop there. Now, it's not fresh, but there's another one right there, right? So, I mean, this is definitely a spot, a trail they use, right? And it looks well maintained. So, and there's poop there, so you know it's been used recently, right? So I think it's worth setting a snare here. So I'll share more aspects of my technique as we go along here, but what I like to do, so when I was growing up, we'd find a run, and then you'd look for like a little tree stick sort of thing next to the run. You'd tie the snare onto it, or you put a stake in the ground and you tie the snare onto it. I have found it, maybe it's just that I'm in my late 40s, but I find it easier just to cut a young green stick that's somewhere between 3/4 of an inch and you know, 1/2 inch in diameter. That's got some strength, and ideally one with a bend like this. This is what I sort of like. And just tie the snare on it when you're standing up. That way you're not doing it on your hands and knees, right? That way you can stick it in where you want it to go. And you stick it in so that this here becomes a duck bar, so they have to duck underneath it, right? So instead of the snare being like this, it's like this, and this just goes laterally into the ground. And you put a couple pegs around it so it really can't go anywhere. And even if you've got like a superhuman Captain America rabbit that can pull it out of the ground, there's so much underbrush here. Dragging something like this is not going to get far, right? And on top of that, I usually tie a flag, a high visibility flag, right onto the end. I usually have the end of it be sort of like this, so again it catches on things. I usually like to have 2 sticks coming off of it so that it catches stuff, right? So that it's just, you know, if the rabbit does pull it out, maybe that happens once or twice a year. If a rabbit's superhuman, pulls it out of the ground, it's just got all this stuff to fetch up on things, right? The other advantage of doing it this way is if you got a big snow coming, you can just pull them all out, and you just sort of jam it in a tree, you know, jam it in the branches of a tree sort of thing. And you know, when it's all done snowing and the trail's reestablished itself, you can just go reset the snare very quickly, right? Because you know where it is. You've already got the tree marked near where it is. It's just easy to readjust. If there's you know, let's say 4 inches of snow, I can pull it out, reset it at that height, right? It's just easier to adjust the snare using this approach, right? So that's what I do. Right, okay, so I think this here is a good sort of choke off point for where they go through. Pretty sure that's the regular course of travel. I have to find a place where this stick will go in. Of course it doesn't want to go in, and of course I'm holding a camera, which makes everything more difficult. Let me go in here a little bit. There we go. Good God. I gotta put the camera on something. I need 2 hands. All right, so that's what we got there. Nice little spot there. Hopefully we'll pop right into that. Yeah, so I've been walking along parallel to this, I don't know, for lack of a better term, moraine. Basically like a river with no water, but there's water below it and it's all rocks. Giant boulder moraine. Now it's time to cross it. So this is a spot I've crossed it before, so I know its ins and outs, put it that way. Although it's been a while since I've been here. It would probably be an excellent spot for snaring because it's just so dense, but I tend to stay away from them because there's just so many holes. You can see there's water down here, right? And sometimes you can hear it you know, sort of trickling through. I used to have a trail going that way, but so many trees have blown down, I have to sort of go around it. And I need to re-establish the trail, because this is kind of the pit going through it this way. A couple things in the way here, really. This tree fell down. The trees just fall down all the time here, right? There's just no getting around it. So anyway, I do have my folding saw with me here today, but I've got too many snares to set today. I'm not gonna bother with it. I'll deal with it maybe on another day when I'm in the mood. It only takes a second to go over it, but generally speaking, I don't like having to, you know, climb over too many trees. Anyway, we're back on the sort of easy walking trail. This is a trail I established years ago, and it's a deer trail basically. I just made what they call the brush line a little bit higher, the stuff that's going across. I just took a few more branches off the trees. I think around here somewhere there's a porcupine house. Maybe I can show you. I seem to recall maybe over here. It's been a while since I've been out here. All right, so this here hole in the ground is fairly sizable. This is a porcupine house. I remember there being tracks here going to it, and you can't see down in there. You need a flashlight to show you, but there's basically like a tunnel in there that probably leads to a system of dams, and there's porcupine poop in there, which kind of looks a bit like deer poop, but it's longer, it's more oblong. There's a bunch of that. I'm not going to reach in and grab it, but anyway, in the winter when there's tracks, you can see that porcupines come in and out of this hole all the time. It's kind of an interesting thing to see with their behavior. They're not very good to eat, so I don't usually I just usually leave them alone. They're not worth the effort. Now here's a spot where I usually manage to snag a rabbit every year. There's a path here that goes underneath that log. You can see I've set a snare right there. Okay, and they also they come out here. And you usually get one here every year. Now last year I didn't bother setting any snares here. I gave this spot a break, and I do that sometimes. I'll have an area that's really productive, and I'll just give it a break for a year. Right? Anyway, this year I decided to go back to it. It's a good spot, so I set one here and one over there. All right, it goes from there over to there and down in there. And there have been years I've set down there as well, but usually this is enough to get at least one. This is a very, what I call a high probability spot. If I don't get one here, it's because I've, you know, been lazy in setting things up in terms of the guide sticks and the head, you know, the duck bar and all that sort of stuff. I think these ones are all right. I could have done a little bit better. But when I tied these snares up, I made them a bit short, so I can only make the circle so big. But make the circle too big, it doesn't work properly. It doesn't go around their head. It goes around their body, and that, you know, they get out of that. They suffer. They, you know, tends to bring predators around. Basically, there's, you know, you don't want to have it too big. And usually, roughly the diameter of the snare should be about what your fist can go through. Now I make it a bit smaller than my fist because I've got a sort of large fist. I'm 6'4", but anyway, roughly that size, about a softball, give or take. There's another spot over here. This is just about you know, 10 yards from the last spot, and this tends to be productive. You can see there's an old guide stick from a previous year, so I'll set another one here. Sometimes I'll set it. Basically, I'm going down a path here, and it's almost like, you can see it's like a hallway through the woods sort of thing. And I like, you know, it wasn't initially like this. I basically cut it through, you know, a little bit of a path here through the woods, and I like when they cross the path. So sometimes I'll set one there, and there's a spot they come in over there. I'll set it there as well. But today I'm just going to put the one here. My goal for today is set about 10 snares. If you set 10 snares, you might get one rabbit. You set 20, you might get two. If you get more than 1 rabbit per 10 snares, you're doing really good. Or you really, really know what you're doing, or you're really, really lucky. All right, now that one's all set. Now I've got about 4 or 5 snares set so far. Some people use what's called a chin lifter, you know, just a little stick underneath the snare. I just put a little moss there, and I find it works pretty well. Very natural, right? I find that works just as well as a chin lifter. I always seem to be amazed at how good your instincts can be for thinking like other animals. I mean, deer aren't the same kind of animal as us, right? They're whatever that's called, ruminants, I think. And I could have that wrong, but basically they're cow-like, right? And we're primates. We're monkey people. So anyway, whenever I walk through this stretch of the woods here, it's just a small little area, but I just find it kind of nice. Just a little less windy, a little more sunny, kind of pleasant, kind of flat, kind of dry. And if I had to set a tent up somewhere, spend the night, I think I'd want to be here. It just seems so nice. And look at this. This deer seems to agree. And around the corner, this deer, a little bit bigger poop, probably bigger deer. This deer seems to agree. And if I'm sure if I looked around enough, I'd find more deer sign in this area. So my guess is that there's more. Yeah, there's more. There's one right there. Look at that. Right? And there's a rabbit poop, and there's more deer poop right there. So this is the spot, right? I was really I never seem to hunt. I don't usually hunt in this area because I've never seen deer. I think they're very nocturnal, or just too smart for me. I'm not quite sure. I've never gotten a deer back here, but they're definitely here, and this is definitely a spot they like to go. Yeah, I don't know. It's not. I have never been able to see them during daylight hours during hunting season. When I have set up trail cameras and stuff like that, they're always coming to the, you know, put out some apples or something like that. They come out to it at like 2 and 3 a.m. You never see them around anything like that during the day. I don't know what they do during the day. Maybe they were here just as I was coming along and they took off when they heard me. In any case, this looks like a nice place for deer to be, and it seems to be a nice place for deer to be. Also, I noticed some rabbits poop, so I'm going to set a rabbit snare here as well. Over here, I noticed what looked like, you can always tell a rabbit trail because there's a degree of grooming, and if you look, I don't know how well you can tell, but there's like a bit of a tunnel through the grasses and brush there. And of course, there's a little rabbit pellet right there. Right, so they do come along here. This is a spot. So it might be worth setting a snare here. Looks like a spot they use. All right, that one's all set, ready to go. Each one of these snares takes about 5 to 10 minutes to set, depending on how prepared I am for each one. Especially this is my first time doing it this year, so you're always slow the first time. So here's a spot that looks like a well-used rabbit trail to me, right? It's like almost a line cut into the moss. And there's too much stuff in the way for it to be a deer trail. And I don't see any, this is very soft moss, I don't see any like hoof prints in the moss, which you would see in places. So I set snare right here. But sometimes these things that look really obvious let you down. Now I got an uncle that has the theory that there's certain trails they use in the summer and certain trails they use in the winter. And that's why sometimes you'll see something that looks like an obvious trail and nothing goes through it at all. So then that could be, right? But man, this thing looks well used. There's nothing to eat here, there's no food here, but they have trails they take to get to and from where they spend the day sleeping and where they spend the night eating. Those tend to be good because they kind of, you know, they don't dilly-dally on those trails. They sort of just blow right through them. They're not meandering around. You sort of want them, you know, moving quickly, right? They're more likely to get snared up. And this is just like a straight line. I can see, you know, just a straight line that way for quite a ways. So I think this is like a highway, like a commuting road that you'd take to work, sort of thing, right? So, you know, hopefully I'm right. Maybe it's a squirrel trail. I don't know. But man, it looks really well used. So we'll see. We'll see when we check it. I thought it would be interesting to show you this spot. So my last sort of long video, this looked like a pond. This was all underwater, and some of these rocks, I mean this rock was showing, but these other ones were not showing. They were underwater, and that was a week ago. And that's just to give you a sense of how much rain we'd gotten, right? Because now I can walk right through this, right? I mean, this was a lake for all, in all the ways that matter. Right now it's completely navigable, but I couldn't even, I had to go around it last time. It was unnavigable. So it's just interesting how much can change in a week. And even though the creek where I crossed the bridge was just as high as it was when this whole area was flooded, now it isn't today. I have no idea why. No clue. Alright, so I decided I'm going to have my lunch out here in the woods today, and luckily there's a dead birch nearby. This is a spot where I've had fire before in a previous video. It's a good spot for this sort of thing. So I thought I'd just use this. Just scuff it up a bit. It helps. Use the outside of the birch bark. With the ferro rod. It's always good to strike your ferro rod a couple times just before you try to use it. Helps sort of get it going. Everything's wet in the woods today. There we go, we're going to start. Get that going. You have to resist the urge to set your knife down. When you get things going like this, you gotta hold on to it until it's safe to put it down, or you'll lose it. Put your knife back where it belongs. Put your ferro rod back where it belongs, or you'll lose them. Alright, now I got a good base here. I can just, this is the lean-to fire setup. Everything's wet, so hopefully that birch bark has enough heat in it to drive out the moisture that's in these spruce boughs. That's pretty much all I got to work with out here today is spruce boughs. You work with what you got. I got water I got to boil because I got it from the creek, and that water is probably not safe to drink as is. I mean, you never know with these things, but it's not worth taking a risk, right? Boy, what a challenging day to get a fire going. Rained like hell last night. We got a lot of rain last night, I think. What was it, 30 millimeters, something like that? It's a good amount of rain. It's like an inch. Just gonna put a little bit more birch bark underneath here. Just a little more jet fuel in there, just to get things going. But I think we got what we need happening there now. So now I can set my my water up, boil. Let's get her going. All right. Hopefully that'll do it. Got a little bag of tea here and a sandwich. The wind's going into the thing there, so it should be all right. All right, now that tea's brewing up, I'll just sit here and have my sandwich and maybe have a little chat. So I thought I would speak to the issue of snaring rabbits, because you know, some people think it's you know, cruel, heartless, and so on, inhumane, all those sorts of words people might use for an activity like that. And you know, to that I would say I can't think of a non-cruel way to kill a thing and eat it. You know, killing is cruel. If you take the life of anything, it's a cruel thing to do. And to speak to the rabbit in particular, They are, whoa, like we're boiling there. I don't know why that took off the way it did. But to speak to the rabbit in particular, I'm just going to let that boil for a minute so it's safe. You know, rabbits, the majority of rabbits don't live a year. I think, like, you know, so the majority of rabbits don't live 1 year long. They all die. And they all die, I think, to what biologists would call extrinsic factors. That is to say, they are killed by something. Even if they have a disease or a parasite or whatever, that doesn't usually kill them. It slows them down and they're killed by something. And they are killed by everything from squirrels to bears. That's right, squirrels kill like baby rabbits. Yeah, they don't live long, they die a horrible death. And they're killed by everything. And so the snare is just one of the many ways that rabbits lose their lives. It's, you know, arguably less vicious than being torn apart by a wild animal, one might argue. Yes, it's a hard way to die, but of the ways rabbits tend to die, that is to say, being killed by something and eaten by it, it's probably one of the, you know, when you do it right, it's probably one of the quicker, because it's just suffocation really, being choked out, quicker and more efficient ways among the ways they have to choose from to die, right? And they're all killed by something. And you were not putting the population at risk. The rabbits are basically unextinctable. That is, if you read about it, just the way they go about living in an ecosystem, it doesn't really matter how much predation they get. It's counterintuitive, but it works with them. If there's heavy predation, the rabbit population drops, but it's not wiped out. Drops long enough for the predators to starve to death, and you know, basically the predator population drops. And the rabbit population goes back up until either the predators are eating too much or there's not enough food around for the rabbits and they get sick and die and that sort of thing. But they always outbreed their problems. They always, their solution to predation of any kind is either being hard to find, their numbers dwindle and they're just, you know, a few of them just escape predation until the predators starve to death. Also, they're nocturnal, right? So they're hard to get, right? They're around at night. They've survived predation for, I don't know how long there's been rabbits, but a very long time. So they're at no risk. By hunting the rabbit, you were hunting probably the most sustainable prey in the forest, right? You just cannot out-hunt them. For me, we might get anywhere from 6 to a dozen rabbits a year, and then we're sort of done. You know, how many rabbit soups and rabbit pies can you eat, right? We're not dependent on it to live. I make enough money to buy all the food I can eat, but we like eating rabbit. I like making rabbit stew, rabbit borscht, and rabbit pie. That's basically what I like making with it. Anyway, so yeah, I just thought I'd speak to that issue a little bit, because it's one of those things when people find out, oh, you hunt rabbits, that's terrible, how can you do that? Well, it's no different than hunting anything else, in my opinion. And from my point of view, it's no different than fishing. And when you're fishing, you're killing stuff and eating it. And I don't see the rabbit as in any sort of different category than fish. You know, it's a living thing out there, trying to make a go of it. And you're coming along and, you know, killing it and eating it for your needs, right? And that's just kind of what happens in nature, and by participating in that process, you got your hand in it. And I'm gonna have my sandwich now, so we'll see you in a little bit. That just about wraps everything up here. I'm just finishing my tea. I'm gonna go home. I guess one more point I should make is that it's handy to have a number of different, you know, tricks up your sleeve when it comes to making a fire. When I came out here to make this fire, I intended to use my ferro rod with a trick called feather sticks. You have a stick and you sort of carve along it and you make like really fine splinters off of that wood, and you can actually light them with a spark. But I was really hungry. Like, I was basically an hour and a half past when I normally eat, and I was just not in the mood. I was working on it. I got a little bit of footage. And just getting frustrated. The wood seemed a bit wet. I was trying to do it with spruce just to see if it would work with spruce. wood was not cooperating, and I didn't have the patience, and you know, just wasn't the right day for it, I guess. So, and that's a good thing to know. Like, there's all kinds of ways to start fires, but you know, are you tired? Are you hungry? Are you cold? Are you wet? Are you just frustrated? Whatever, right? Are you having a bad day? And then I used the wax paper that my sandwich was wrapped in, and that didn't provide enough heat to get the spruce boughs going, because they were so damn wet, and I was a bit lackadaisical in getting. I just didn't set the fire up properly. I just wasn't firing on all cylinders. So that actually didn't work. So then I had to go get birch bark from a tree. And that got the fire going. Even then I didn't think I had enough. I went to grab some more. There's a dead tree over there that's got all kinds of it on it. So anyway, it's good to have, you know, some different tricks up your sleeve. Don't leave it all up to one thing, right? And of course I could have picked later and other things, you know, kicking around, not a problem, right? But just for the sake of conversation, right? It's useful to have a number of different tricks up your sleeve for starting a fire, in case the one way you know how to do it doesn't work because things are exceptionally wet or the wind is strong or whatever the situation is, right? So anyway, yeah, I didn't get a lot of snare set today, and I'll probably go out tomorrow and set a few more and check the ones I set today. And I usually have, once I get my line perfectly completely set up, I usually have about 15 to 20 snares set at any one time. That's about the amount that, you know, I find any more than that. I only want so many rabbits, right? I'm not feeding my family with these. It's just a nice thing to have. We enjoy the sort of game. Rabbit's a very gamey meat, so we sort of enjoy that flavor a little bit. But there's a point in the year where we're sort of tired of eating that, and we want to go back to, you know, pork and chicken and steak and stuff. So, one thing I forgot to mention, because people probably noticed, I'm not out here with a shotgun or a rifle or anything like that, even though I'm hunting. Sometimes I bring one along, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm out and it's a Sunday. Where I live, you can't do that on Sunday. There's no hunting on Sunday this time of year. But today is not a Sunday. It's a Thursday. I could totally have one along, but it's really, really windy. And I found, I mean, I almost never see rabbits out here anyway. It's very dense country, and like, I think I've seen 2 in my life out here, maybe 3, maybe 4. You know, I've been here 10 years in this particular woods, right? I've been hunting this woods for 10 years. I've probably seen 4 rabbits in that full time. One of them I got a shot at it. So it's almost pointless to bring a gun around unless you want a bit of an arm workout. But especially on windy days, you don't tend to see them on windy days, and if you read about it, they tend to stay in. You think about how a rabbit, think of those ears, right? Those big rabbit ears, right? One of their primary means of defense is like hearing things before it's too late. And on a windy day, they couldn't hear things as well. There's too many competing noises, right? So, you know, probably, you know, the ones that have the instinct to just sort of stay in their, it's not, burrow is the wrong word, but they basically have a place they spend the day. And the ones that have the instinct to just sort of stay put on windy days, they tend to be the ones that get to have the babies in the spring. So there just was no point in bringing it along today. I'll do videos talking about that sort of stuff at some point in time, but there just didn't seem any point in bringing it along today. And it's really not what this channel is about. It's not a gun channel. Anyway, I hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Click the bell if you want to be notified when we make a new video. And until next time, enjoy the outdoors on the cheap. Thanks for watching.